Welcome back to the Infamous Goats podcast.
I'm Celis,
I'm Josiah.
and this is where we give you our weekly perspective of pop culture, sports, and entertainment.
Celis, NBA preseason just started. Like, you be keeping up with them?
Nah, I've been keeping up with the Bulls, obviously, because that's my team. But every other team now, I don't really care about. I mean, you got Dame going to Milwaukee. I'm just tired, bro. The East is tough right now, so it's not looking good for my Bulls. You got Dame in Milwaukee. You got fucking Drew Holiday to the Celtics. It's not looking good in the East, man.
Yeah, and I've been watching social media, then watching the actual games. It's two different experiences because I feel like social media, they only highlight the stuff they want you to see. Like they want you to see
big names.
Yeah, Wemby versus Chet or Tingus Pingus or
Pingus.
Yeah, LeBron and Lakers, or they want you to see these names, but in reality, like it's these guys that don't have a name for themselves, like showing flashes of stardom.
But it's the NBA. It's a business first. You got to promote the product, and then to promote the product, you got to promote the big names. So, from a business standpoint, they're doing the right things. From a logical standpoint, I mean, you got talented players in the league that ain't getting as much shine as you say, but hey, that's just the NBA for you, man. I want to talk about, man, because you seen the new Exorcist came out, and the shit been getting trashed on lately. Like, what's
really?
Man, because you know The Exorcist is like one of the most legendary horror films of all time. So I don't know. The guy that directed all the Halloween movies, the newer trilogy, David Gordon Green, he directed that. But like it's been getting bombed on, bro. That shit debuted like 24% on the Rotten Tomatoes.
Jeez. Honestly, I haven't been hearing a lot about The Exorcist, but I have been hearing good reviews on Saw.
Yeah, Saw, yeah. I mean, the second week drops was pretty big, but I mean, that's expectable. Horror movies. Everybody only go see them first week. But I want to go see. I probably end up go seeing that Saw because it did catch my eye because they said it's a playoff. Well, it's a direct sequel to the first Saw movie instead of an add-on.
Wow. See, now knowing that information, I got to go watch the first one, then turn around, then watch it. It's been years since I saw a Saw movie, so.
Hell yeah, shit. If y'all want a review, let us know.
But man, speaking of horror films, we got a special guest that knows a lot about horror movies.
Yeah, we got Tom Devlin, special effects artist, director, actor, writer. Man, he just do it all. We met him at Flashback Weekend in Chicago. This man has literally worked on over 100 films. 100 films. And he's a deep horror fanatic, man. And we just recently watched one of his movies, Teddy Told Me To. Amazing. He does his own special effects for his films and directs them. So this is just a hard work. And I was so glad that we was able to get him on the podcast because we both love horror. And this is something we can dive deep into for hours.
Without further ado, let's bring him in. Yo, how you feeling?
Good. How you doing?
I'm good.
Pretty good. Hi, anything new?
Just working on stuff for the Famous Monsters convention. That's Jason Goes to Hell.
Yeah, I love that mask right there.
That's part 7.
Yeah, that's dope. Yeah, and I see at your museum around this time of the year, you guys are doing like a haunted house theme.
Oh yeah, we do a haunted house on the weekends. We're at conventions every weekend as well. Like it's crazy. October's nuts.
Yeah, I bet it's nonstop work from sun up to sundown.
Yeah.
But yeah, so tell us, like, what are you working on right now?
Well, the big thing that just happened was Teddy Told Me To came out streaming yesterday. And then we are finishing editing a movie called Slaughterhouse on the Hill. And we're getting ready to go into production on a robot boxing movie. So there's tons of stuff going on.
Damn, man, that's amazing, bro. Teddy Told Me To. So I'll make sure y'all go stream that right now.
I don't know how to flip this around, but these are the robots. Making these big robots.
Oh, wow. Man.
Okay. Wait, like, were they influenced? Like, you ever had that toy set where it's like,
yeah, like Rock'em Sock'em.
Yeah, that's what it's called. Yeah, I had that as a kid. Do you have like any influence behind that?
Definitely, 100%.
But man, yo, I love it. I love
it too, man. So I want to take it back a little bit, man, because we talked briefly at Flashback Weekend, and I went to your panel, And that's what really like sparked my interest. I'm like, man, this dude is amazing. Like, this is a cool dude. And you were talking about how you make your own props for your movies and do your own special effects. And you worked on over 100 films. Like, that's crazy. 100 films.
Yeah,
I,
I've been involved with everything from the biggest high budget to the very bottom low budget.
man, you've been in this what 20 years, right?
Yeah, about almost 25.
Sheesh, man. Sheesh.
Man, that's lower than I've been born, man. Like you a vet at this point, huh?
Yeah, it's been it feels like a lifetime.
Okay, that's dope. So how did you get into like visual effects?
Makeup effects. I do creature creation and makeup effects. Visual effects is more computer oriented. I you know, I wasn't really great in school and stuff, and I dropped out of high school, moved to LA, and got a job on X-Files. It was it's
Wow.
kind of crazy. Like I just knew what I wanted to do from a really young age, and I just worked towards it.
Man, that's so bold, man.
Yeah, you didn't put
Yeah, I
yourself in
mean,
a box growing up, man.
it
I love
it
to hear it.
really was like I had to make it because I needed to prove everybody wrong. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
by moving to LA, I went to a makeup school to learn monster makeup, but they didn't have enough students. So I took like a beauty makeup course there, and then I was going to go find another school, and they were like, "Oh, we'll get you an internship at this effect shop," and that ended up being WM Creations, and I worked on X-Files for on season 8 for like 2 weeks for free, and then they hired me on full time, and I stayed there for 2 years, and we did everything from like Terminator 3, Red Dragon, Scorpion King, big movies, you know, and
Wow,
Mm.
X
Scorpion
Files,
King.
CSI Miami, and then when that all kind of dried up, I jumped to another shop and worked on Buffy and Angel for the last 2 seasons, and then opened my own company in 2002, and the rest is history. Been doing a lot of low budget horror movies ever since, you know.
Man, you worked on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That's crazy, man.
Yeah,
Uh,
season 7 of Buffy and season 5 of Angel, I think.
hmm
man,
Yeah. So about your time in LA, because you say you just got started in LA. What was the biggest struggle of like operating in this field during your time in LA?
Just being a young kid with no experience, like I basically made a fake portfolio to get the job. Like, oh look, I worked on this and that, but it was all fake. They knew it, you know, but I think they appreciated the gumption. And then and just like being the little kid at the time, you know, I was like 18, 19, and all the vets that I was working with were, you know, they were seasoned effects artists. So I didn't want to ever look like I didn't know what I was doing. You know, the insecurities were real. And at the end of the day, I learned so much from so many great people that stepping into the lower budget stuff that I do, I bring so much of that with me from those bigger shows.
yes, I like that, man. Yeah, I was reading up about you. You come from Pennsylvania, correct?
Yeah, East Stroudsburg.
Yeah. What was that like growing up?
I just lived in the middle of the woods, you know, like we didn't get cable or anything. We had VCR, so just watched a lot of tapes. I ended up working at a video store. Me and my little group of friends, we were like the punk rock metal kids, and we loved horror films, so we would go see every one that came out. And you know, I happened to live in this little town that there was a shop there called Frazetta's Fantasy Corner, and Bill Frazetta, who owned it, was the son of Frank Frazetta, who was a famous, very famous fantasy artist. He made Conan the Barbarian and Heavy
Wow.
Metal Magazine and like all Danzig's artwork. So Bill Frazetta really kind of introduced me to makeup effects and taught me about like Tom Savini, and you know, from there it just I kind of figured out what I wanted to do. You know.
So that built-in faction with horror was already there, and like makeup effects just kind of like mesh with it once you got that
Yeah,
early
I
influence.
always loved horror movies since I was a little kid, and I just didn't know what I never knew I would make a career out of it. I loved Jason Voorhees, and I love Toxic Avenger, and I love, you know, Chucky and stuff. But I kind of wanted to be a comic book artist growing up, like from a real young age. And then it wasn't until I learned about Tom Savini that I decided I wanted to make practical effects rather than just draw. you know.
Yeah.
Probably about 14, 15 is when I made the decision that I was probably going to go to LA and give a stab. And I was in LA for 15 years. I did a lot of stuff there, had a lot of fun, and made a lot of like my circle of friends are the people I had posters of when I was a kid, you know, like Kane Hodder
Yeah.
and Butch Patrick and these people that I surround myself with. Like I'm sitting here busting my ass doing all this work for this weekend, but I have to remind myself, like I'm making Jason prosthetics for Kane to wear. Like that's kind of my childhood
That's
dream, you know?
mind blowing.
Yeah. So I've done every look he's worn. I just with this Jason Goes to Hell that I just did. That's the last one of the Jasons that Kane has not, you know, worn that I've made. So I've done all of his looks now. I did Warrington Gillette from part 2. I helped CJ Graham modify his mask for part 6. Like I've been involved with the Jason stuff so much, and it's funny because I never. Sometimes you forget that feels like a job, but it's not a job. This is like childhood dream.
Yeah, he's just a kid at the playground having fun.
Yeah,
Man.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what happens when you turn your passion into a reality, and it's like,
Yeah.
man, that's dope. But yo, so jumping back, oh, go ahead, Celis.
Oh no, I wanted to mention. You said you decided at 14 or 15 that you wanted to go to LA. I couldn't even imagine at 14 or 15 just wanted to take a leap like that. Like, so at what age did you actually go to LA?
I was 18. Well, 17. Maybe I was still 17 when I left.
Wow.
But like I said, I sucked at school. I wasn't really into school, and in 11th grade, I just bailed and went to LA with my girlfriend. and you know, the funny thing is, I've asked my mom recently. I was like, "How could you let your 17-year-old kid and his girlfriend jump in a pickup truck and go to LA?" And she's like, "Oh, I thought you'd be back in 3 months. You know, broke." And I never realized she had so little faith. You know, to me, there was no other answer. Like I wasn't from Pennsylvania from birth, so I lived in Central California until I was in 5th grade and then moved there. So it was really a culture shock. Like I went from like Saved by the Bell to Deliverance. You know what I mean? Like middle of the woods, or more like Friday Night Lights. Like it was like football town, middle of the woods, rednecks, and so like from 5th grade on, I knew that I didn't want to live there forever. You know, I originally thought I would end up being a comic book artist, and then you know I want to be a pro snowboarder. And at some point, I found makeup effects, and I was like, nope, this is it. This is exactly what I'm going to do. And the crazy thing is, I'm not naturally a gifted artist. It took a lot of practice, a lot of time to build the skills that it takes that I have now. Like when I was in middle school and stuff, I wasn't like a good artist. It really took until I was about 25, 26 to get comfortable sculpting and painting and stuff.
Wow. Was that something you struggled with? Was confidence in your work, or like were you reluctant to show people things or put yourself out there or promote yourself because you weren't confident in the work?
I've never had an issue with confidence. Like I have insecurities about like whether or not I'm asking too many questions or if I was bothering people, but I never wasn't confident. Like if I put it down, I have no problem showing people or putting it on TV or whatever it is. But I also like to think that my ego is in check most times, so I can take constructive criticism. I'm very open to learning. Back then, I've gotten a little less now because I feel like I've been there and done it. But back then, I was a sponge, man. I just wanted to be the best at everything I do. And now I've started directing films, and I'm back to square one. Like you know, the cool thing is I spent 25 years watching other people make mistakes or successes. So I've learned a lot from other people, but now with directing, like there's so much more to kind of build my craft, you know?
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. But man, so while working on these big sets in LA, like who are some people that you actually like gain knowledge from? Like
A bunch of guys most people won't know, but like Tim Considine. Tim Considine was an effects artist that created Toxic Avenger Part 4. But he worked at the huge shops too, and his he taught me how to make fiberglass molds, taught me how to do urethane. He was like a mean ass, grumpy New Yorker, but I learned so much from him. Clinton Wayne, who was another effects artist that I worked with at WM, he kind of mentored me like almost like a big brother program. Like he really, we did several episodes of CSI Miami together, and he really helped me with product knowledge. But he also made me feel like I had skills. Like there was stuff I did that he didn't do, so made me feel like I was doing something. I had a guy named Rallis Khan that I used to actually be roommates with. I learned so much from him. And then teaching, I taught at Cinema Makeup School from 2005 to 2007, I think. And then also L Makeup Institute here in Vegas and Makeup First in Chicago. And by teaching, you really start to listen to your own bullshit. So when you're like correcting other people constantly, you become a much better artist.
Yeah, I could just imagine from like being on set to like actually teaching. It's probably going from like from a football player to a coach, like making that transition. It's probably like a different perspective.
Yeah, and then you also build a team of people you can bring on set with you, like the good ones, you know, and then I don't know, it really it's the confidence builder for sure. A lot of people say, "Oh, if you can't do, you teach," but I think if you want to do it better, you teach. You know,
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, what is it about monsters that really sparked interest in you? Because there could have been so many other things, but oh, I like monsters. This is something that I love.
I think it has something to do with wanting to be a comic book artist. Like my earliest memories are He-Man and like the creatures in He-Man or Ninja Turtles and Toxic Crusaders, you know. So I always liked like characters and creatures. But then in like 1996, maybe I went to Chiller Theater, a horror convention in New Jersey, and I met Gunnar Hansen and Kane Hodder and Tom Savini, and they're so welcoming when you go to a horror convention. Like when you guys were at Flashback, people talk to you like you're a person. If you could have gone to a convention for comedy and I could have met Woody Harrelson and Jim Carrey, I might have a whole different career. You know, maybe I'm writing jokes or something. But I just felt like back then we didn't have Instagram, MySpace, or Facebook or any of that stuff where you could see a celebrity's life. So when I met Kane Hodder behind the table, that's Jason Voorhees. I only knew him from inside the TV. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I didn't know his personality. I didn't know even his past work. I just knew Jason, and he was so cool. I felt like I could do this. Like I could be a part of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's some of my, I guess, the earliest times I remember deciding this is a career would be back then.
Did you ever build a relationship with Kane Hodder?
Yeah, so like in 2005, I did the first movie I ever worked with him, and that was Ed Gein, the Butcher of Plainsfield, and we became friends really quick on set. I was a huge fan, and I'm a nerd, so I had no problem telling him how big of a fan I was, and he signed some autographs for me and stuff. But after the movie wrapped, we stayed in touch, and I would make stuff for him on and off, and he would do little jobs that I would maybe recommend him for. And then about 5 years ago or 4 years ago, I built him an Uber Jason suit for the horror conventions. And then we are partners now. We travel around in to every convention he goes to, pretty much I go to, and I put him in costume. So like I said, I've made every Jason Voorhees he's ever played. I've sculpted, molded, and run them, and then I apply them on him, and he does his photo ops. I get a piece of the pie, and then we go to the next show and do the same thing. So like this month we'll be in Philadelphia at Mad Monster Fest. That's what these two heads are for. And then we go to Scarefest in Lexington, Kentucky next weekend or the following weekend, and then Spooky Empire in Orlando. So every time he's in different Jason costumes, and I made them and I put them on him.
That's so dope, man. Just
I got this is a part 7 hand. I just have to repaint it. Yeah, we're getting ready. You know, tomorrow I leave here tonight, and then we do Friday the 13th, and then Friday or Saturday the 14th, and then I'm out into Kentucky. We do part 7 and part 8, so it's pretty cool.
Man, I gotta be amazing just working with Kane Hodder, man, because I know when I walked up to talk to him, I was so nervous, but then, like you said, he makes you feel like a human. He gives you genuine conversation. Like I remember, actually, I talked to the both of you when I walked up to his line to get his autograph. He asked both of us to spell ecstatic, and we both got it wrong.
Yeah. You want to talk about anytime I've lost my confidence? Kane is a grammatic like Nazi. He loves spelling and grammar, so I can't text message him because if there's a comma in the wrong spot or I misspell a word, he'll never let me forget it. So I have to I try to call him whenever I can instead of text him.
Sound like my English teacher.
Yeah, he's really funny about that stuff. He's like he'll quiz everybody.
Man, that's dope.
You kind of put me on the spot with that. I was like, oh ecstatic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to talk about your transitions from the big films to like the small indie films. Cause I feel like indie films are on the rise right now, and you got your hands in a lot of indie films. So like, what was that like going there with a lot of experience and like just teaching probably like a young guy that probably like reminded yourself of you when you were younger, teach them the ways.
So the crazy thing is this, like I moved to LA to work on movies, but I never wanted to work on big movies. I didn't move there to work on Jurassic Park or something huge. I wanted to make The Toxic Avenger and Puppet Master. Like I love low budget horror films. I would have loved to work on a Friday the 13th movie back in the 80s, but not one today where it's a mega $1 million movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like the creative control. I like the small set atmosphere. I really was inspired by Tom Savini, and Tom Savini's career was like in tow with George Romero, where they were not union and they were bucking the system, and they made these little tiny movies that worked really well. People think Tom Savini. You ask 90% of the people who their favorite effects artists are, and they'll say Tom Savini, but he only did effects on 14 movies, and like his last film, 1984. He doesn't, it's crazy, but he's built this legacy. So I kind of wanted to do something like that. And I ended up on the big end of things, working on these huge movies and stuff. I was on set for Red Dragon on the Universal backlot. Like, what is my life? You know what I mean?
That's Anthony Hopkins. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, they told me, they said, don't look at Sir Anthony Hopkins. And right when I saw him, I went right up to him and I was like, man, I'm a huge fan. And I was holding this head that was like got shot in the face with a shotgun. And he goes, did you make that? And I said, I did. And he goes, I'm a huge fan of yours. And I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Oh, that's amazing, man. Just
But
talking to
yeah,
Hannibal Lecter.
I never wanted to work on the big stuff. I always wanted to do small movies. So as soon as I started my own company, my goal was Troma and Full Moon because that's what I loved. And I eventually got both those under my belt. I've done like 14 Full Moon movies, and I did Poultrygeist for Troma and lots of other stuff for Lloyd, and then a ton of Asylum movies and a ton of independent films. And I love independent films. I love the passion and the heart that goes into it, and the problem solving that comes with that,
Yeah, we were just talking about this before you got on the call, where we were talking about the old like Texas Chainsaw Massacres and Friday the 13th, how all of those were made under $1 million, but they're some of the most remembered horror movies of all time.
That's how I feel about it too. Like that's what my goal in life is to achieve what Tobe Hooper and Sam Raimi did, and those little movies that became legendary.
I've actually seen one of your indie films before. It was called, I don't know if you remember, but it's called The Butcher.
Oh man, that was my first movie with Mike Pfeiffer. Mike Pfeiffer was a huge part of my career, but The Butcher, he produced it. Yeah, I definitely remember The Butcher. We shot it at Stable Ranch 2 months after Devil's Rejects wrapped, so we used all the Devil's Rejects sets. So the outside of the house is the Devil's Rejects house. The inside of the house is the house from People Under the Stairs.
What? That's
Yeah.
crazy. I gotta go rewatch this now.
Yeah, man, they got the guy that played Jack Reacher in that movie.
It's not a great movie.
Oh, I love the movie, and the girl jumps in front of the car, her tongue was cut out. Oh man, it freaked me out as a kid.
I have a little cameo in it. I'm the dead guy on the hood of the Jeep or something like that.
Wow.
And I also, did you have a cameo in your most recent film, Teddy Told Me? Was
Yeah,
Teddy
I have
Told
a
You? Yeah.
yeah, I have a brief cameo in that where I get hit in the face with a shovel.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
see
okay, yeah,
that.
yeah, but yeah, me and Sells literally watching that together. Like, is that Tom Devlin? Like, we just couldn't. But yeah, but
So when did you feel like your mentality started to change where you were like, all right, I'm going all in. I'm going to put my best foot forward and try to make a name for myself. But like you said, when you started your own company.
I don't know if I think that was always the plan. Like I don't think I ever didn't have the goal to be I never wanted to work for the guy. I wanted to be the guy, you
Yeah,
know.
absolutely. Yeah, that's what I mean. When did you know you wanted to be the guy, quote unquote,
I
as you
think
said?
day one. I think the moment that I decided that I was going to move across country and do this. And the thing is I quote Alice in Wonderland all the time on this. You got to know to grow. Like I know what I'm doing and where I want to go, like in advance always. I just, and that's why I feel like things work out because I just know. I know that it's going to kick ass, you know.
I love
that's
that,
I
man.
love that mentality. Yeah, that's a dope mentality to have. So, like, how was the transition and going over to like directing movies? Because I know that's the even bigger step.
That's a crazy thing because I never knew I wanted to be a director.
Mm.
That was never an intention. My wife is a very successful director. She's done a couple feature films and she's really good at it. And I tried to get her to direct Teddy Told Me to, and she said no. She was like, "I think you
Wow.
need to do it. It's your story. You do it." And
Mm.
so I kind of like wasn't into it at first, but after the first day of shooting, I realized I just found something that I want to do for the rest of my life. Like it is so cool for a control freak like myself to be in charge of everything. I've always been a tool of a production, but now I'm the head of production. It was very cool. It was very cool.
Man, I
So
love that.
yeah, shout out Miss Devlin for like getting you behind the camera, like.
Way to quit.
But man, that's dope. So I feel like with you been being really great with makeup and stepping behind the camera, does that make it easier for you or like a director
It
that
it definitely I know where I can cut corners and I know where I can't cut corners. And that's the thing. Like as an effects artist, there's things that I've worked for so long on, and we get on set and they cut it. We can't do it, you know.
Mhm.
Or there's things that they shoot that they absolutely don't need. So I feel like I have the ability to foresee what I'm going to use and what I'm not going to use, and how to pull off the effect that I need to do. But but also it's a struggle because sometimes I get so caught up in directing, I don't think about the effects so much, and then I feel like I got to go back afterwards and fix them up. You know?
Yeah. I think that's just like, was that more just the perfectionist side of you
Yeah,
coming out? Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely. Absolutely. Now, what would you say drives that work ethic of yours? Because I feel like you just always been a worker since you was young. You know what you want and you push forward.
You know, I wish I could tell you. If I knew, I could tell my kids because they don't have it. Um, I don't know. I just I am addicted to doing. Like I can't stop doing, you know. So like I'll be making masks for Kane today and then at night building sets for a movie I'm going to shoot tomorrow, get on the airplane, go, get back here, continue building the set. Like it's crazy, you know. I never stop and I don't know. I just I can't, there's certain people that I feel are wired like me. I'll hear similarities and people like Rob Deerdick, he never stops doing, you know, and Gene Simmons never stops. And there's certain people, Violent J of ICP, that guy never stops, you know.
Yeah, you gotta
Absolutely.
have that dog in you.
Yeah, yeah. There's some kind of something to prove, but also there's just some kind of reward driven happiness. I don't know.
I think it's that's that feeling of fulfillment, knowing that you gave it your all and it's starting to pay off. Because obviously, like you said, you created so many opportunities for yourself just from working hard all these years.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Yeah, that's
love that.
dope. But yeah, I want to talk about your museum for a second, like because I never been on the West Coast before. But like, what was the process of like, you know what, I want to open up a museum? Like, what was that process like?
Well, we moved to Boulder City from LA because we wanted to raise some kids. And Boulder City's right outside Las Vegas. It's like the town that time forgot. You know, it's like Pleasantville. And it's the home of the Hoover Dam, which I had no idea was such a big deal until I lived here. And I just saw this building and it kind of spoke to me. I was like, that's a cool old building. We should build a monster museum in there. I had no idea at that time I wasn't going to work on movies anymore. I was kind of hanging it up. I was just going to teach and do my thing. And then I saw that building and I opened it and it worked, man. It's just one of these things that if you build it, they will come. We've been very successful with the Monster Museum. And it's cool. It gives me a chance to be super artistic and make what I want one time, put it in there. It lives there forever until I want to change it, you know?
Man, that gotta be the best feeling in the world, just knowing your work is on display for the world to see.
It's cool. And what I didn't count on was the amount of traffic to the Hoover Dam. A lot of people will stop before or after seeing the dam because you have to drive right past the museum. And then also the YouTubers. We get these YouTubers that come through and then they put it out online and then it really does go to the world, you know. It's crazy. The YouTube stuff is really interesting.
Oh yeah, like they're taking over the world. You got some YouTubers and streamers bigger than actors nowadays. This is
Yeah.
absolutely insane.
Yeah, the game has changed, man. I guarantee, like your stuff generates content because, I remember some of the heads you were showing us at your panel, and you were talking about how you made them, man. It just stood out because you said, "Oh yeah, all this is homemade." And I'm thinking, like, what? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I made it at my house. I'm thinking, like that has to take like a whole team, but no, you're doing it by yourself.
Yep. And
Yeah.
that is that's the thing. Like it's crazy, man. It's crazy because as long as I feel like there's something to be made, somebody wants to see it, you know, and they'll pay to see it.
Absolutely, I
That's
love that,
dope.
man.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I
One
want
thing
to.
I did, I was just one more thing about your museum. One thing I really like about your museum, you have a section where it's kind of like your favorite, like, well, a director's like display or something. Like you got Spielberg over here, you got Wes Craven over here. Like were those like your biggest influence behind like horror films?
So I try to make it pretty educational. Even with some stuff that's in the museum that I'm not even a huge fan of, but most of it I am a huge fan of. But if there's a director that like Wes Craven, he made some of the best monster movies of all time. Nightmare on Elm Street, Hills Have Eyes, you know.
Absolutely.
So of course I want to educate the world on who Wes Craven was and where he came from and what he did, you know. Um, but there's some more modern movies like I haven't got that in there yet, but the new Pennywise. I have an old Pennywise in there from the original It because that was the clown that scared me. But I'm
Nice.
creating a new Pennywise because that's a practical makeup that scared a lot of modern people and I feel like even though it's not my bag of tea, it's not my right to decide what has merit to be educational, you know.
Yeah. What do you think about horror films nowadays? Because as you can see, like a lot of the kills are CGI heavy and not really as practical as they used to be. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on that?
You know, I'm not a huge fan of modern mainstream horror. I just went and saw that new Exorcist movie and I couldn't be
Look at
more
just
disappointed.
Stellas
It
was just telling me about that.
I just talked about that in the intro for this episode.
it was so tough, man. It was I don't know. I felt like they wanted to be part what's gone wrong with the children and part Evil Dead remake and certainly not The Exorcist.
Uh, just ruining a iconic movie, man. Because the first one was made in 1978. I think Hollywood is just in the remake stage right now, and they can't get out of it.
Still, they haven't been able to get out of it in 20 years.
Right. And you got movies like The Terrifier, who's doing like crazy numbers right now. And they're an independent film. Like at Flashback Weekend, I saw a lot of what's his name?
Cosplayers?
Art the Clown.
Art the Clown, yeah. I saw a lot of people playing as Art the Clown than like some of these like mainstream movie slashers.
The thing is Terrifier did exactly what every one of us independent film wants to do. You know, they broke the mold. They got through the barrier to the other side, and I'm super stoked for those guys.
That's dope. Did you see those films?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan actually, but I love the filmmakers. I love Damien Leone and I love David, who plays Art the Clown. I just am so proud of those guys, but I'm not the biggest Terrifier fan.
Yeah, Kane Hodder kind of had the same take on that film during his panel.
Yeah.
Shout out to them though, because that movie is definitely making strides.
I mean, they've done what we all want to do, and they're humble and friendly, and they're gonna keep doing it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't love the Saw films, but those guys did a similar thing where they came out of nowhere and made a franchise. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about your movie Teddy Told Me To. Now we recently watched it, man. And like when I tell you, I was just like so excited to see it, and just knowing that you did this yourself, man. That's what amazed me even more. And one of the first things that came to my mind was like the first 10 minutes. I see Lisa Wilcox was in your movie.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, it took me a while. Like when I first seen it, I pressed pause and rewinded, and Josiah was like, "Who is that?" I'm like, "That's Lisa Wilcox from Nightmare on Elm Street." Like, she's in this movie. Like, that blew my mind at first.
Yeah, she's great. She lives here in Las Vegas. It took a little coaxing because I didn't have the money that most of her jobs would have. So we're friends though, and I just, I sweet talked her, and she gave me a day.
Oh, man, that's amazing,
That's
man. That's
dope.
definitely amazing. You also had C.J. Graham in that too. Like, there was a lot of horror icons in that movie.
Yeah, Warrington Gillette, C.J. Graham, Felissa Rose, Trent Haga. There's a lot, Papa Shango showed up for a minute. All those guys, they're just like, I've been doing this for a long time, so I just called them and said, "I'm making this movie. Would you be a part of it?" You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's so dope.
And they were awesome. They're awesome. I can't thank them all enough, because when somebody watches this movie and realizes that, they're like, "Wow, this isn't just a crummy little movie,"
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And I want to talk about one of your cameos in there, because you worked on Puppet Master and you had one of the puppets. It's not Pinhead, the one with
Tunneler.
Tunneler. That's his name. I love Puppet Master growing up. Like, and I had to point that out to Cells. Like, if you've never seen Puppet Master, you need to go watch it. And I really love that cameo you put in there.
And there's also one, I don't know if you could tell because it's kind of silly, but there's a Mac and Me guy dressed up like Mac and Me that's an old 80s movie. And I just, I didn't know if I was going to get a chance to make another film. So I just put everything, I threw the kitchen sink at that movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like that campfire scene too.
I wanted it to be a fun slasher film that's reminiscent of Sleepaway Camp 2 or Friday the 13th Part 4. And that's kind of what we did. John Mazzari did all the music. He did all the music from Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and he did my score as a favor. Like, it's crazy. Like, it was awesome how supportive everybody was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that, man. You still close friends with the cast? Like,
yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I want to talk about one scene in there. It was early on in the movie when they all were having a campfire, and he was telling the backstory of Teddy. That reminded me of a scene from Friday the 13th Part 2. Was there some similar? Yeah. Oh, that's the exact. I knew it. I knew it. I'm like, this looks like the scene where he was describing Jason. That's where he got inspiration from that from?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, and I like to consider everything we did a homage, not a blatant ripoff. But there's several spots where, like, the montage scene of fixing up the haunt was taken from Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, or Leprechaun. And the obviously the campfire scene was Friday the 13th Part 2. um, which I love.
I love that.
And there's quite a few times where it's like, oh, this is from that. This is from that.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
It definitely didn't feel like a ripoff. You put your own take on it, and I think it added to the level of storytelling that you were trying to build.
Yeah,
Because that movie had
and
a great.
the generic slasherness of it. I really wanted just one of those '80s kind of romps with blood, boobs, and people killing people. I mean, I just wanted
Absolutely.
like those fun movies from the past.
Yeah, you did.
What was some of your favorite kills from that movie that you?
I love when there's a guy named Wes Logan, Beast the Butcher. He's a wrestler. When he gets his guts spilled out on the floor,
Oh
and
my God! Yeah.
it comes off, I call that the hatchet moment. Like I wanted to make a hatchet moment, meaning when Victor Crowley tears that head in half and the camera spins around. I wanted something memorable like that. So that's probably my favorite kill in there. And then, of course, beating Eric Hart in the face with the hammer in slow motion for way too long. Love that. Every If you knew that kid, you would want to do that too.
Oh man, that's
Nah,
dope.
I like the scene where you were cutting the skin off, and then she was like,
Yeah.
"Ah!"
Yeah.
Like-
But man, so is there like any spoiler free details you could give us on part two?
There's a script that is written. Spoiler free is tough because the whole thing is it has a lot to do with little Angela growing up and becoming an artist.
Okay. Okay. All right,
Yeah,
okay.
just leave that out there. Stay tuned,
And
y'all, because it definitely.
I really want to get Scout Taylor Compton to play older little Angela.
Oh, that'd be amazing, man. She's so huge in the horror community. You know,
Yeah.
Scout Taylor Compton. She played Jamie Lee Curtis's character in the Halloween remake, Josiah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Laurie Strode and Rob Zombie's Halloween.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know that. Yeah. Man, that'd be dope.
yeah, that would be dope, man. Like, who are some people that you aspire to work with in the future?
Um, Man, I got a list. I got a list of people, and I'm just checking them off. Mankind, Mick Foley. I would love to
Oh
work with Mick.
yeah.
I would love to. I would love to work with. There's a guy named Doug Tate. He's a good friend of mine. If the part's right, I'd love to put Doug Tate in the movie. He was in Freddy versus Jason. He plays Jason when he's walking out of the water holding Freddy's head. But he's a great creature performer, and I'd love to put him in a more of a serious role out of makeup because I don't feel like he gets out of makeup enough. There's a lot. I have every movie I'm like, who can we put in this one? Who can we put in this one?
But yeah, man. So to finish off this episode, we're gonna hit you with a couple fire rapid questions. And my first question is, if you decide to open up a second museum, what city would you locate it in?
Clearwater, Florida.
Any reason why?
Hulk Hogan has a shop there. That's pretty cool. I think we actually went. I'd love to. I used to say Orlando. I'm going to open in Orlando. I'm going to open in Orlando. Then I went to Orlando and I was like, you know what? There's too much competition here. So we went, stayed at a hotel in Clearwater, and I was like, this would work. And there's like a beach shop there that gets a ton of tourist activity. It would be a very similar crowd. Wrestlers and horror go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. All right, I got one for you. What are your top 3 horror movies of all time?
Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Toxic Avenger, and Monster Squad.
What do you
Which
think about
Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974.
Okay,
70?
okay.
Okay.
What do you think about the new Toxic Avenger movie coming out?
I haven't watched the trailers. I try not to ever watch trailers of anything. I have a little bit of a hard time because the Toxic Avenger's entire life has been fighting against mega conglomerates. And then Legacy Films is putting out a remake, which is the biggest film company right now. So I don't know. Or Legendary rather, not Legacy. So I feel weird about the new Toxic Avenger. I hope it's good.
I feel like some things y'all should just leave it in the past and let it be legendary, not remake it.
I agree.
Right. Okay, I got one more question for you. Early in the episode, you said you wanted to do comic books. So, are you a Marvel guy or DC guy?
I'm a I'm a both. I love Swamp
Ah,
Thing. I love Swamp Thing and Batman. A little bit of Lobo. But
okay,
I
okay.
love Wolverine and early '90s X-Men. Man,
Mm.
Daredevil. I love Daredevil and Ghost Rider. You know, so like '90s Marvel, Jim Lee era, big into that. And
Okay.
I
Frank
can,
Miller era Daredevil, Man Without Fear. Yeah,
that's valid. I think that's probably the most popular era of Marvel comics to me.
it was a it was a cool thing because when like I said, I never intended on working on big movies, but the first script I ever broke down was the Ben Affleck Daredevil, and
Oh
I was
wow.
working at WM on that. I made a lot of stuff for Daredevil, and before that, I mean, there wasn't comic book movies weren't a thing yet. It wasn't there was no Marvel universe, so I think the X-Men movie came out in 2000, and then there
Yep.
was before Spider-Man even, I think. And but it was awesome, man. I know people bag on that movie, but that was one of the greatest experiences of my life.
Wow, you worked on Daredevil. That's crazy. I remember seeing
Yeah,
that movie as a kid.
yeah. I did all the bullseye stuff. So like I ran a bunch of bullseye appliances for his forehead. I didn't apply it. It was applied by John Jackson, but I just made them. And then I made a full bullseye body with fake silicone head that falls out a window and lands on a car. We made a side. I life casted Jennifer Gardner's hand and made a sigh gets thrown through her hand. You know, bunch of cool stuff.
Wow.
But yeah, that was a really good time.
Man, that's crazy, man. You got so many stories to tell.
Dang.
I just got one last rapid fire question for you. If you could go back and do makeup for any horror movie, which one would it be?
Probably Toxic Avenger Part One.
Ooh.
Mm. Okay. Why that movie?
I just love Toxie, and I don't ever think he's been done right. You know, it's always a really cool headpiece, and then they just kind of paint his arms brown. You know,
Yeah.
um,
Mhm.
I've I've got a Toxic Avenger in my museum that I love that I made. That's all bubbly and boily, and that I would do it more like that. You know, I've always wanted to do a Toxic Avenger movie. That's and then the other one would be the Leprechaun. Like if I could have done
Yeah.
anything, if there's a franchise that I could have been involved with that I haven't touched yet, it would be the Leprechaun. Like if I ex Leprechaun, I'd die happy.
No, I'm calling it now. They're going to remake that movie within the next 5 or 10
They're
years.
doing it right
Like,
now.
Yeah, they
They're
doing
making
it.
it right now,
are
and
they really?
tried
Yeah.
hard. I everybody I could trying to get involved, and I couldn't find anybody that would write back.
Man, that's
Oh, that's
tough.
crazy, man. I don't give
Yeah,
up the faith, man. What's meant to be will happen, bro.
yeah.
So, I got one of the last things I wanted to wrap with you about was like about all these conventions that you're going to. What has that whole experience been like? Talking to different fans, people who seen your work, or just like just coming up to you just to say, "Hey."
The conventions are cool because I'm not like a headliner, you know, like if you know my work, you're probably pretty into this stuff. Um, or a lot of times they realize they saw me on Face Off and they're like, "Oh my God, you're that guy that was on Face Off." And I'm like, "Yeah." And then we get to talking and it ends up they've seen 7 or 12 of my movies, you know, or like you,
Mm.
how you, oh, I saw The Butcher, you know. Um, it's cool. I love going to conventions. The craziest part is I started out as a fan at conventions when I was 14, 15, and now that's my job, you know, and sometimes like the travel's a pain in the ass and like right now I'm hustling to finish these things to get them packed for tomorrow. But at the end of the day, like it's pretty cool.
Man, I love that, man. That's amazing. I think we wishing you much success, man. And I think that's gonna wrap it up for us right here. We appreciate you for coming on. We hope you
Yes,
can
sir.
return soon. We definitely enjoyed this conversation, man. Legendary talk going on right here.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you guys so much for having me and thanks for dealing with my tardiness.
That's all.
Um,
That's all right.
it's just crazy.
Oh
We know
yeah.
you're a busy guy, man.
Yeah, well, you
Yeah,
already broke it down. You're a busy man. So we respect you for giving us this time tonight.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Oh my God, man, that was such a great episode, bro.
Another great interview in the can. Like I
October about
just
to be lit.
don't
October's about to be lit, bro.
for sure. And I really hope the viewers listening, like, this is like a legendary person we just had on. We just had a conversation with. Probably your favorite horror movie, he has something to do with that. It wouldn't be
Absolutely.
probably as good without him. So I really hope all the young special effect artists are really like tuning into this and like picking up the gems he was dropping, because
Yeah,
could
because
be you in the future.
absolutely, because him talking about his passion starting at the age of 14 and then going to LA at 17, like that's so inspirational because you see how far he come now compared to where he started. And the people he's worked with. Like the man had legendary horror icons in his independent film. Like you don't get things like that without building those relationships and putting in the work every day.
Facts. And those, like, yeah, those things just don't fall in your lap. So those take blood, sweat, and tears, stuff like that. And we're just so fortunate to have them like on, like, because we're just two small podcasters, you know. We growing, and he
Absolutely,
let us
man.
pick his brain.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed this episode, man. We gotta have him back on. I think he'd come back on. It seemed like he had fun, man. We had some good questions.
For sure, yeah. Hope we run into him at another convention.
We absolutely will, because it seemed like that's all him and Kane do is travel for conventions. So yeah, if y'all don't know, Teddy Told Me To is streaming on all platforms. You catch it on Prime Video, Google Play Store, Vudu, wherever you find your movies at. Please go stream it and support. This is definitely a humble guy, and we enjoy talking to him, and we want to support everything he got coming forward.
And just seeing his hard work, like behind the scenes, just made me appreciate the film even more. So if you enjoyed
Absolutely.
this episode, you'll most definitely enjoy this movie.
All right, but that's going to do it for us today, y'all. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Follow us on Facebook and YouTube at Infamous Ghost Podcast. And you can follow us on Instagram at Infamous Ghost Pod.
And you can follow us on Twitter and TikTok at Infamous Ghosts. But until then, we see y'all next time.
Peace.
Peace.